Okay, welcome back. We're going to be doing chapters 6 through 11 in the Chinese Cinderella. Chapter 6, First Day at School. On Monday morning, with Aunt Baba still in Tianjin, a maid helped me put on my brand new school uniform. It was white, a little too long, stiff with starch, and had the name of my new school, Sacred Heart, Shangding, close enough, in bright red Chinese characters embroidered on the left breast pocket. After breakfast, I stayed in the hallway for what seemed like a very long time, waiting for someone to take me to school, wondering who it was going to be. I was excited to be starting first grade in my new primary school, which was next door to Big Sister's Aurora Middle School. Big Sister, however, was still in bed. Her classes were scheduled to begin an hour later than mine. The chauffeur had already left to drive my brothers to St. John's Academy, which was in the opposite direction. I saw Cook wheeling his bicycle through the hallway to go to the market. He spotted me watching him. "Who is taking you to school?" he asked. "I don't know." I was nervous and couldn't help shooting a wistful glance at the big clock ticking away on the wall. It was getting late and everyone had forgotten about me. What should I do? I was panic-stricken and felt tears rolling down my cheeks. Cook shrugged. "It's certainly not my job. No one mentioned anything to me about you." He was about to mount his bike and ride away when he noticed my tears. Now, don't cry." Sorry, my dog's being goofy. "Being late for school isn't the end of the world." "Oh, all right. Come along then," he mumbled gruffly as he lifted me onto the handlebars of his bicycle. "Your Shenzhen primary school happens to be right next to the market. Sit here quietly. Don't squirm. We'll be there in no time at all." After school was let out in the early afternoon, I waited for all the other first graders by the school gate. One by one, they were greeted and led away by their anxiously hovering mothers. Eventually, I was the only one left. Nobody had come for me. The metal gate slowly clanged shut behind me as I watched my classmates disperse, each clutching their mother's hand and eagerly recounting the adventures of her first day at school. After a long time, I peered through a crack into the deserted playground. Not a person was in sight. Cautiously, I pushed against the massive iron doorway. It was firmly locked. Trembling with fear, I realized that no one was coming to pick me up. Too embarrassed to knock or draw attention to myself, I walked tentatively out into the Shanghai streets. Surely, if you try hard enough, I would remember the way home. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon. At first, I wandered along a wide, straight road lined with tall, leafy trees. Motor cars, trams, rickshaws, pedicabs, and bicycles whizzed by. I kept walking, but dared not cross the road. Glancing briefly at the open fronted doors overhung with colorful uprighted bilingual signboards, I turned a corner and now the sidewalk ceased with people and noise and commotion. Coolies shuttering heavy loads on bamboo poles, hawkers selling toys, crickets in cages, fans, cold tea, candies, meat-filled buns, spring rolls, tea eggs, and fermented bean curd. Stalls and booths offering services such as haircuts, shaves, dental care, letter writing, extraction of earwax, beggars banging tin cups and chanting for a handout, except for me. Everyone was striding purposefully along, going somewhere. Everyone had a destination. I must have walked for miles and miles, but where was I? Should I enter a shop and ask for directions? But I didn't know my home address. What should I say? Should I approach that kindly old storekeeper, smiling at me in the front from the doorway of his antique shop, and tell him, "Please, sir, I want to go home"? But where was my home? It was getting dark. Bright neon signs in blue, yellow, red, and orange came on and blinked at me. Had anyone at home missed me? Did they think I was still at school? Were they looking for me? What should I do? I walked past a bustling, brightly lit dim sum shop. Such a wonderful aroma was wafting through the door. Through the plate glass window, I saw roast ducks, soy sauce chickens, and hunks of glistening roast pork hanging from hooks. There was a young chef wielding his cleaver and deftly chopping a duck into bite-sized pieces on a wooden block. Wouldn't it be heavenly to be given a slice of meat? But that might be too much to hope for. I would be quite content with a piece of bone to chew on. As I salivated, I imagined the taste of the food sliding down my throat. Breakfast seemed such a long time ago. Someone was touching my shoulder. I started and looked up. A large, red-faced woman, whom I had just seen bustling around the tables in the restaurant, was speaking to me. You have been standing here for almost half an hour. What's your mother doing that she would leave you waiting out here all by yourself? Doesn't she know it's dangerous for a little girl your age to be hanging around on the street like this? Are you supposed to have dinner with her here? Terrified, I lowered my head and shuffled my feet. Come and wait for her inside, she commanded as she glanced at my brand new school uniform. My daughter started school today, too. Inside it was hot and noisy. I stood hesitantly by the door. Suddenly I noticed a black telephone next to the cash register. Why, just the day before, Big Brother and I had been playing, and he had taught me a new numbers game he had just invented. Take any number and add, subtract, multiply, or divide it. The one who comes up with the number 13 first wins. What number should we use, Big Brother? Dodgy, I had asked. Run downstairs and get our telephone number. It's marked on the front of the telephone in the stairway. I'd rushed down for the number, and we'd played with it all afternoon, backward and forward, breaking it down and building it up again. 79281. That was it. 79281. Finally, Big Brother had won. He had broken 79281 into 9, 8, 21, and 7. 9 minus 8 equals 1. 21 plus 7 equals 3. He then placed the number 3 to the right of the number 1 and got 13, thereby winning the game. I clapped my hands in glee and admiration. I felt honored that Big Brother had deigned to play with me all afternoon. No one was looking when I picked up the phone and dialed. Father answered on the third ring. Speak up, he shouted. There is so much background noise. Who is it? It's your daughter, fifth daughter. Who, me? Where are you? Father said in an even voice, quite calmly, and suddenly with a pang, I realized nobody had missed me. They didn't even know I wasn't home. I'm in a restaurant. I got lost when I tried to walk home from school. Let me speak to the proprietor. You stay right there, and I'll come and pick you up. Soon afterward, Father arrived and drove me home in his big black Buick. Traffic was light, and he drove in silence. When we arrived, he patted me on the head. Next time you go anywhere for the first time, he admonished, as he handed me a map of Shanghai from the glove compartment of his car. Read this map. Find out where you are and where you wish to go. This way you'll never get lost again. That's exactly what I'll do, I thought to myself. After dinner, I'm going to ask Big Brother to teach me how to read this map. With Aunt Baba still in Taijin, there's obviously nobody looking out for me. I'll just have to find my own way. Chapter 7, Family Reunion. Big Brother told me that Yi Yi, Aunt Baba, third brother, and little sister were scheduled to arrive in Shanghai on the last Sunday in October. I started counting the days. Little sister had been separated from her mother, Naiying, since she was just 6 months old. Now she was almost 2. And Aunt Baba had mentioned in her last letter that little sister was starting to jabber away in Mandarin with that strong Tianjin accent. How adorable. On the morning of their arrival, Father and the chauffeur met them at the station. I was overjoyed to see my beloved Aunt Baba and Yi Yi again. Third brother looked taller and thinner, but little sister had changed the most. Aunt Baba had dressed her in a pretty pink silk trousers and a matching jacket and pink cloth shoes. Her hair was neatly combed into 2 beribboned braids that stood up on each side, bobbing as she walked. She looked like a big doll with her large round eyes and her chubby pink cheeks, rushing around the sitting room, examining the dishes of candy, melon seeds, peanuts, ginger slices, and salted plums laid out on the coffee table, and then running back to Aunt Baba. All of us beckoned to her and vied for attention as she teased us by half advancing and then quickly retreating to Aunt Baba's side. Repeatedly, Niang signaled her baby to come to her, but to little sister, her mother was a stranger and she ignored her. Niang was dressed in a dark brown Persian silk dress with dangling pearl earrings and a string of large pearls around her neck. 15 feet away, I could still smell the cloying aroma of her perfume. Trying to help, Aunt Baba unwrapped a piece of candy and waved it. Little sister ran eagerly toward our aunt, and Aunt Baba handed the candy to Naeem, who waved it back and forth, attempting to entice her daughter to go to her. Rejecting the bribe and becoming annoyed, little sister ran to the candy dish instead and tipped all the candies under the carpet. Growing visibly impatient, Nang approached little sister while we scrambled to pick up the candies. Bad girl, 4-year-old brother screamed at his baby sister. You shouldn't have done that. Big sister added in a stern voice, trying to curry favor with Naing. The rest of us remained silent. Don't want you, little sister said directly to Naing in a distinct voice. Don't like you. Go away. Surprised and hurt, Naing bent down to pick up her baby, who was wriggling and resisting with all her might. An unnatural hush fell upon the room. All eyes were on them as mother and daughter struggled. Little sister was now howling at the top of her voice while tears rolled down her little cheeks. Don't want you, she repeated loudly. Aunt Baba, tell her go away, go away. No one said a word as Naim carried her weeping and kicking child and placed her firmly on the couch next to her. Little sister was pushing blindly against her mother's neck and face, now red and contorted with frustration. Keep still! Nyang screamed futilely again and again in a piercing voice. In the melee, the string holding her pearls broke and the precious gems tumbled one by one, rolling across the carpet onto the wooden floor. This proved simply too much for Naeem. Thoroughly exasperated, she gave her baby's face a stinging slap. Little sister only cried more loudly, deliberately, and viciously. Naeem now set about beating her daughter in earnest. Her blows landed indiscriminately on little sister's ears, cheeks, neck, and head. Eve uh, everyone, cowered as the punishment went on and on. The grown-ups avoided looking at each other while the children shrank into our seats. We couldn't understand why Father, Yi and Aunt Baba were making no attempt to stop the assault. Why wasn't anyone objecting? I wanted to run away but dared not move. I knew I should remain silent, but words choked me and I felt compelled to spit them out. Finally, I could bear it no longer. Quaking with terror, I blurted out, don't beat her anymore. She is only a baby. My protest seemed to halt Naing in the midst of her frenzy. Little sister's screams also simmered down to a whimper. Naing glared at me. Her large, prominent eyes appeared to be popping out of their orbits with fury. How dare you, she said through her teeth. For a few seconds, I was fearful she was going to pounce on me instead. Across the room, Aunt Baba gave me a warning look and a slight shake of her head, telling me to say no more. In those few moments, we had understood everything, not only about Naeem, but also about all the grown-ups. Now that Nene was dead, there was no doubt who was in charge. Fuming with rage, Naeem slowly extended her right arm and pointed her index finger at me. I felt panic-stricken and saw only my stepmother's long, red, perfectly manicured fingernail aimed straight at me. Then I heard her words loaded with malice, which made my heart jump and the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Get out, she snarled in a cold, distinctive voice. I shall never forgive you. Never, never, never. You better watch out from now on. You will pay for your arrogance. Chapter 8, Tram Fare. Though Father sent us to expensive missionary schools, he and Nyang instituted an austerity program to teach us the value of money. To begin with, we were given no pocket money whatsoever, not even the tram fare. We had nothing to wear except our school uniforms. Big sister and I were ordered to keep our haircuts short, straight, and old-fashioned. For my 3 brothers, it was much worse. Their heads were shaved bald in the style of Buddhist monks, and they were teased mercilessly by their peers. My school was a mile and a half from home, immediately adjacent to Big Sister's school. The number 8 tram ran directly from door to door. St. John's Academy was 3 miles away and could be reached by the same number 8 tram traveling in the opposite direction. When Yi first arrived in Shanghai, we begged him for money and he gave us our tram fare to go to school. 2 months later, Yi had spent all his money and he brought up the subject one evening. Dinner was almost over and everyone was eating fruit when Aunt Baba mentioned that she had decided to go back to work as a bank teller at Grand Aunt's Bank. This was probably her way of reminding Father that she and Yi Yi had run out of money for their daily needs. We were holding our breath on their behalf. Father and Nying looked annoyed. You don't need to work like a commoner, Father said. You have everything you need here. Besides, Yi enjoys your companionship at home. If either of you needs money, why don't you come to us and ask? I've told you both before that if I am busy or in the office, all you have to do is speak to Jean Nying here, and she'll give it to you. How is this possible? I asked myself. Where is Yi Yi's own money? Is he no longer head of our family? Why is he suddenly and mysteriously dependent on Father and Nying for pocket money? It made me cringe to think of my gentle and dignified grandfather begging for pocket money from my haughty stepmother. You are both so generous and employ so many servants that I find little I can do to help, Aunt Baba replied politely. The children are away all day at school. Going to work every day will get me out of the house and give me something to do. Father now appealed to Yi. What do you think? Won't you miss her? Let her work if that's what she enjoys, Yi answered. She likes to spend her salary on playing mahjong and buying treats for the children. By the way, I meant to mention this to you before. The children should be given a regular weekly allowance. What for? Father asked, turning to us. Hasn't everything been provided for you? Well, for one thing, replied Big Sister, speaking on behalf of all of us, we need the tram fare daily to go to school. Tram fare? Nang interjected sharply. Who told you you could ride the tram? Why can't you walk? Exercise is good for you. It's too far to walk to St. John's. By the time we get there, it'll be time to turn around and go home again, Big Brother said. Nonsense, Father exclaimed. Walking is good for growing children like you. I loathe walking, Big Brother grumbled, especially first thing in the morning. How dare you contradict your father, Nyang threatened. If he orders you to walk to school, then it's your duty to obey him. Do you hear? We were crowded into silence and looked toward Yi Yi, expecting him to come to our defense. But he kept his eyes on his plate and went on peeling his apple. Big Sister suddenly took the plunge. Yi has always given us pocket money. We're used to going to school by tram. Nobody in my class walks to school. Most of my classmates are driven there in private cars. Naeem became enraged. Your father works hard to support everyone under this roof, she explained in a loud, angry voice, shooting a quick glance at Yi and Aunt Baba. How sneaky you all are to get money from Yi without your father's knowledge. We send you to expensive schools so you'll grow up correctly. We certainly don't want you to be coddled into becoming idle layabouts. From now on, all of you are forbidden to go behind our backs to trouble Yi or Aunt Baba for money. Do you hear? Though her remarks were addressed to us, they were obviously meant for Yi and Aunt Baba as well. We paused briefly and then continued. We're not saying you're never to ride the tram again. We merely want to acknowledge your past errors. Admit you've been wrong. Promise you'll change for the better. Come to us and apologize. Tell us from now on you will behave differently. We'll give you the tram fare, only if you're truly contrite. The room was completely still. The only sound I heard was that of Yi Yi chomping on his apple. Surely he was going to say something to put Nying in her place. The maids hustled around with hot, moist towels for us to wipe our fingers and mouths. Then Nying spoke again in a sugary tone, looking directly at Yi Yi with a smile. These tangerines are so juicy and sweet. Here, do have one. Let me peel it for you. At first, we were all mad. The whole tram fare issue was obviously somehow tied up with the establishment of a new hierarchy within our family. Now that Nene was dead and Naing going to take over, we told each other we would always be loyal to Yi Yi. If necessary, we intended to walk to school forever, or at least until graduation, to show our allegiance to him. 10 days later, I spotted Big Sister getting off the tram at the stop closest to our lane. Though she ignored me, I dared not say anything to her. She had obviously given in. My three brothers held out week after week. St. John's was so far from home. The weather turned cold and nasty. They were getting up in the dark and returning home exhausted. One after another, they gradually knuckled under. Though Yi and Aunt Baba both kept urging me to go downstairs and beg for my tram fare, I just couldn't do it. Why? I hardly know myself. Something to do with loyalty, fair play, and a sense of obligation. I did not discuss this with anyone, not even Aunt Baba. I simply couldn't force myself to go to Nying and admit that I, and therefore Yi, had erred in the past. Besides, it just doesn't seem right to betray him, especially when I had begged for the money from him in the first place. When the rain pelted down in sheets and gales howled through the streets, I would grit my teeth as I set about the seemingly endless journey from Avenue Joffrey. Arriving drenched at the school gates, I tried not to look at my schoolmates stepping daintily out of rickshaws, pedicabs, and chauffeur-driven cars. I knew some of them laughed at me behind my back and whispered to each other that I took my own number 11 private tram to school daily, meaning that my legs carried me. On Sunday afternoons, Nine frequently called out for my siblings to come downstairs to her bedroom, which third brother had nicknamed the Holy of Holies, and pick up their tram fares. Hearing this, I'd feel a stab of anguish because I was the only one always excluded. Big sister sometimes came back upstairs to show off by laying her coins in a row on my bed and counting them aloud, one by one in front of me. Chapter 9, Chinese New Year. We had been looking forward to Chinese New Year for weeks. It was a holiday not only for all the school children in China, but for all the grown-ups as well. Even father was taking off 3 whole days uh, from work to celebrate. For the first time since our departure from Tianjin, a tailor had come to our house to measure everyone for new outfits. In China, new clothes were worn on New Year's Day to signal a new beginning. On New Year's Eve, father and Nyang summoned us down to the Holy of Holies and gave us our new clothes. My three brothers were terribly disappointed to find three identical, loose fitting long Chinese gowns made of dark blue wool with traditional Mandarin collars and cloth buttons. Big sister was handed a padded silk Chinese kupao. I got a basic brown smock made of material left over from one of Big Sister's garments. Fourth brother, however, received a stylish Western outfit with a Peter Pan collar and matching tie and belt. Little sister acquired a fashionable knitted pink dress bedecked with ribbons and bows. We five stepchildren trooped back upstairs in disgust. My brothers threw their robes on the beds contemptuously. They had been looking forward to Western style suits, shirts, and ties. That was what their trend-setting schoolmates were wearing at St. John's. Trash, Big Brother declared, tossing his new garment in the air and kicking it. Who wants junk like this? You'd think we're still living in the Qing dynasty, as if it's not bad enough to be called the three Buddhist monks. If they see us dressed in these outdated antique clothes, we might as well forget about going to school altogether. The other day, third brother complained bitterly. My desk partner asked me when I was going to start growing a pigtail and shaving my brow. Maybe you're planning to be the new emperor, Pu Yi, and live in the Forbidden Palace, he told me. What gets me, Big Sister said, is the blatant inequality between her children and us. I wouldn't mind if all seven of us were treated the same way. If they really believed in traditional clothes, then all seven children should be wearing them, not just the five of us. Aside from the clothes, second brother interrupted. What about our shaved heads? I don't see fourth brother sporting a Buddhist monk special. Why, the little princeling has his hair cut at the most fashionable children's hairstylist on Nanjing Lu, where when he stands next to us, it's like we've stepped out of two different centuries. Here, father wants to teach us the value of money, Big Brother added, yet her children can order whatever they desire from the kitchen at any hour of the day or night. We're supposed to eat only 3 meals a day with congee and preserved vegetables for breakfast every morning. But I see cook preparing bacon, eggs, toast, fresh berries, and melon for their breakfast. Last Sunday, I went into the kitchen and told Cook I wanted a slice of bacon. The idiot wouldn't even give me a straight answer. I have my orders, he told me. Bacon is reserved for the first floor. One day, I'm going to sock him. It's really getting intolerable, Big Sister complained, lowering her voice and motioning me to close the door. I obeyed with alacrity. Yeah, I can't say it. Sorry. Happy to be included. We should be careful, though. Nyang has her spies. That new tutor nanny she's employed for her two children, that Miss Chen, she gives me the creeps. She's so slimy and obscure. Okay, I'm having a horrible day pronouncing, so just bear with me. Smiling and bowing all the time. Yesterday, she cornered me and invited me in to have afternoon tea with fourth brother and little sister in the nursery. I never saw him spread finger sandwiches, toasted buns, chestnut cream cake, sausage rolls. Here we are restricted to breakfast, lunch, dinner, and starving between meals, while our half siblings are throwing their leftovers from the balcony to Jackie in the garden. It's so unfair. Anyway, Miss Chen kept quizzing me about Yi Yi, Baba, all of you, and what we think of Nying. Of course, I didn't reveal anything. I'm sure whatever I'd have said, I would have reported straight back to our stepmother. I simply detest that sneaky stool pigeon, Miss Chen, Big Brother confessed. Day before yesterday, Father calls the three of us down to the Holy of Holies, big lecture. Miss Chen says that one of you was playing with the tap of the filtered water tank in the stairway. How many times have I told you not to drink out of that tank? It's permanently out of bounds to you. Do you hear? If you want drinking water, you get it from the hot water thermos flask in the kitchen. Otherwise, you boys have a habit of leaving the tap turned on when there is temporarily no water. Later on, when the tap water percolates through the filter, there is a big pool of water on the stairs. Your mother has had enough of it, so we deny that we even touched the tap. Does he believe us? Of course not. I told Father that I personally observed Miss Chen fiddling around with the tap early that morning. Probably nobody ever warned her about how finicky the water tank is. What's the end result? Father chooses to believe her, and we each get 2 lashes from the dog whip. The liar. I hate her. This just can't go on, Big Sister declared. Let's get organized. If we unite together and protest in one voice, they won't ignore us. What about a hunger strike? That's sure to get their attention. Are you ready to join us, fifth younger sister, Ume? I was thrilled that Big Sister was addressing me personally. Of course I am, I exclaimed ardently. But I don't think a hunger strike will work. They'll probably be very happy that we're not eating. 5 less mouths to feed, that's all. For a hunger strike to succeed, they've got to care whether we live or die. I'm for a revolution, second brother exclaimed. Out and out war. We go to the kitchen, open the refrigerator, eat what we want, face the consequences. What can they do? The food's already in our stomachs being digested. Won't be so easy to get it back out. You're always so impulsive and volatile, Big Brother exclaimed critically, just like that rash general, Zhang Fei, in the three countries war. We've got to be more subtle and patient. Diplomacy and subterfuge are always superior to confrontation. Let's ask for a private conference with Father and point out the inequities in a calm, logical fashion. It won't work, third brother counseled. Father will never come to the table without Naing. What about an anonymous letter written in Chinese sent to Father through the mail? Naing doesn't read any Chinese. Big Sister could write it with a brush and ink. Her handwriting is excellent and can pass for that of an adult. Brilliant idea, exclaimed Big Sister. Let's draft the letter now. We hunched over the table, muttering suggestions, becoming more and more excited at our escapade. Third brother decided we might as well go to the bathroom and relieve himself while a letter was being written. He yanked open the door, stepped outside, and to his horror, almost collided with Naing, who was standing immediately behind the portal with her ear glued against it. Ashen-faced and petrified, he stared dumbly at our stepmother without fully closing the door, while she looked down at him disdainfully. There was a deathly silence as they regarded each other. Third brother started to tremble with terror. Slowly, Naing raised her right index finger against her lips, warning him not to make a sound. She then waved him on with her open left hand. In the bathroom, as he told us a few moments later, third brother locked the door carefully behind him. Recalling Naing's intimidating stare, sphinx-like immobility, and expression of distinctive menace, he was seized by a surge of nausea. How long had she been listening? What had she heard? Was everyone still plotting? Would they send him away from home? Where would he go? He vomited again and again, rinsing his mouth out over and over at the tap, dreading the moment of truth. If only he could postpone his return indefinitely and stay here forever, alone, uninvolved, away from everyone, behind a locked door. It thought suddenly hit him like a blow. What if Naing was still waiting for him to go back? Could his absence be construed as a deliberate warning to the others that something was afoot? How long had he been away? He felt his mouth go dry as he quickly flushed the toilet and stumbled out. His legs seemed to keep buckling under his under in an extraordinary way. He hurried back and noticed at once that no one was standing outside the bedroom door. A wave of relief washed over him. True, the door was still slightly ajar, the way he had left it, but Naing was no longer there. He could clearly hear the murmur of Big Sister's voice, tinged with purpose and excitement, drifting down the corridor. Naing must have caught every word. He returned and collapsed in his seat, absolutely drained. It's over. We're doomed. He cried tremulously, quaking with fear. In a leaden voice, he related his encounter with Nang outside the bedroom door. A profound and uneasy silence came over us. We stared at each other, dumbfounded. Slowly but methodically, we set about destroying all of the draft copies of the incriminating anonymous letter of appeal to Father. Big Sister tore the paper into shreds while muttering, "Deny everything," over and over. Big Brother lit a match and reduced the whole lot to ashes, which we scattered outside the window. When the dinner bell rang, we trooped downstairs stoically to face the music, telling each other we were in this together and would resist with a united front. We were prepared for the confrontation, but dinner came and went without incident. In fact, Niang seemed more cordial than usual, reminding us that the next day was Chinese New Year. We should dress in our new clothes. As a special treat, would be served a salted duck egg for breakfast. Then Father would take us for a drive in his motor car along the Bund, a grand embankment along the river, ending with a visit at Great Aunt's Bank at 480 Nanjing Lu, where we had all been invited to lunch. When we returned upstairs after dinner and still nothing had been mentioned, we could hardly believe our good luck. We began to question Third Brother's sanity. Had he imagined that Naing had overheard us, but he stuck to his story? Perhaps, he suggested darkly, we're being kept deliberately in a state of uncertainty because that's what Naing most enjoys, the cat and mouse game. Once again, we began to feel sick with apprehension, but there was nothing we could do but wait. What Naing decided to do was divide our loyalty by recruiting our leader, Big Sister, over to their side. The next day we rose from the table after a festive New Year's dinner. Naing smiled at Big Sister and invited her to move downstairs into a spare bedroom on the second floor, their floor. Her offer aroused a number of disturbing emotions among us. After Big Sister, Dai Ji, moved down to the second floor, she started assuming airs and distancing herself from those of us left on the floor above. She yearned to gain Naing's favor and gradually came to realize the importance of being on good terms with Miss Chang. The latter shared a room with Naing's two children and catered to their every wish, particularly those of fourth brother and Naing's favorite darling. As the days went by, Big Sister's Dai Ji attitude toward Miss Chang underwent a profound change. The two became friends, bonded by mutual aptitude and appetite for intrigue. Big Sister would scurry around to Niang at every opportunity to list her grievances against her former allies, fawning on those in favor and gossiping about those fallen from grace. She vaunted her newfound power to instill fear, and Niang rewarded her with special favors, gifts, pocket money, outings, and friends. There were no more private gatherings among the five of us, let alone anonymous letters to Father. Full of envy and discontent, we four met to discuss the situation. "Why is she being so favored?" Big Brother asked. "This has been especially noticeable since Naing eavesdropped on us on New Year's Eve. Naing must have learned then that Big Sister is our so-called leader. She is the only one capable of disguising her handwriting to write a credible anonymous letter to Father in Chinese. What's going on between her and Naing? I don't trust either of them. They are two of a kind and will hatch up something horrible when they team up like this." "She has allegiance to Naing written all over her face," second brother added. "She makes me sick. She probably makes up outrageous lies about us and adds oil and soy sauce to everything Naing likes to hear," agreed third brother. "Her method of getting ahead is to inform on everyone up here." "The maids were moving furniture into her room yesterday. The doors opened, so I went in," confided Big Brother. "Do you know, she now has her own writing desk and chest of drawers. Here the three of us have to share a room, but she not only has a room to herself, but a lacy white bedspread and curtains to match. While I was looking around, she sneaked behind me and tapped me on the shoulder. 'In future, knock and ask permission before coming in here,' she commanded. I almost threw up when I heard her aggressive and overbearing voice. You'd think she had turned into Nining herself." She has obviously defected, third brother related, the way she struts around. Yesterday I was coming up the stairs when I saw Big Sister at the doorway of the fourth brother's bedroom, begging him for her a teeny weeny piece of chocolate cake to tide her over until dinner. It made me ill to watch her sucking up to the wily little squirt, groveling and demeaning herself like that. What sort of leader is she anyway? Whose side is she on? I'd rather starve to death than lick the boots of fourth brother. Big brother turned on me. I saw big sister with her arms around you yesterday asking you questions. Beware of her. She is an expert at feigning affection. Don't trust her or tell her anything. Otherwise, you'll get hurt. Just remember, she is not like other people's big sisters. She doesn't love anyone, certainly not you. If she can, she will do you in. There is no doubt about it. In no time at all, Big Sister had completely gone over to the other side. I grew even closer to my aunt. Our room became my refuge. Coming home from school every afternoon, I was ever so glad to cross its threshold, close the door, and spread out my books. Doing homework was the only way to cushion myself from the harrowing uncertainties all around. I knew Nyang loathed me and I despised my aunt. It saddened me that Aunt Baba seemed to be under a life sentence of subordination. Though I was little, I understood the awkwardness of her position, how Nying's wishes always took precedence, how she had to demonstrate caution, submission, and humility at every turn. I found it impossible to speak of this to anyone. It was simply too painful. Instead, I tried to make it up to my aunt by studying hard and getting perfect report cards. Besides, that seemed to be the only way to please my father or get attention from him whatsoever. I was 7 years old and in the second grade. The girls in my class nicknamed Genius, partly because of my perfect scholastic record, but also because of my compositions and short stories. I started writing by accident. Miss Lin, my Chinese literature teacher, whose daughter, Lin Tao Tao, was my classmate, once gave our class a homework assignment to write a composition titled My Best Friend. Most girls wrote about their mothers. I didn't know mine, so I wrote of my aunt. My aunt and I share a room. She is my best friend and cares about me in every way. Not only about my hair, my clothes, and how I look, but also about my studies, my thoughts, and what I am. Though I am really nothing, she makes me believe I am special. When I get a good report card, she locks it in her safe deposit box and wears the key around her neck, even when she sleeps, as if my grades were her most cherished treasures. My mama and my aunt used to be best friends. Sometimes I dream of my mama on my walks to and from school. I think my mama lives high up on a mountain in a magic castle. One day, if I'm really good and study very hard, she will ride down on a cloud to rescue me and take me to live with her. Nothing in Shanghai can compare with her place. It's a fairyland full of fragrant flowers, towering pines, lovely rocks, soaring bamboos, and chirping birds. Every child can enter without a ticket, and girls are treated the same as boys. No one is sneered at or scolded without reason. It's called paradise. Miss Lynn gave me a high mark and pinned my composition on the bulletin board. From then on, I wrote whenever I had a spare moment. It thrilled me to bring my literary efforts to school and to see my classmates pass them illicitly from desk to desk. Groups of girls would gather around me during the recess to discuss my stories or to hear me read aloud the latest escapades of my imaginary heroines. Excuse me. To me, writing was pure pleasure. It thrilled me to be able to escape the horrors of my daily life in such a simple way. When I wrote, I forgot that I was an unwanted daughter who had caused her mother's death. Instead, I could be anybody I wished to be. In my narratives, I poured out everything that I dared not say out loud. I was friends with the beautiful princesses and dashing knights who lived in my imagination. I was no longer the lonely little girl bullied by her siblings. Instead, I was the female warrior Mulan who would rescue her aunt and Yi from harm. In time, my stories became real to my classmates. Also, once I used the surname Lin to portray a villain. Lin Tao Tao read the tale, angrily erased Lin, and scribbled Yen, my family name, in its place. A quarrel ensued between us, each one enraged because the other had used her name in such a fashion. When I tried to erase my name and reinsert hers, Lin Tao Tao suddenly burst into tears. It's only make believe, I protested, feeling ashamed for having made her cry. No, it isn't. You know it isn't. Look, you're rubbing so hard you made a hole in the paper. We both stared at the hole, and then suddenly it struck me that we were arguing over nothing. I pointed to the hole and started to giggle. We're quarreling over a hole, I told her. A hole is nothing. We're fighting about nothing. Soon she was laughing too. How about calling your villain Wu Ming no name, she suggested. That way, nothing becomes no name and nobody gets mad at anybody. Brilliant. Let's shake hands on that. So the title of my story became The Villain with No Name. In spite of my writing and academic record, my classmates probably suspected there was something pathetic about me. I never spoke of my family, neither issued nor accepted any invitations outside of school, and always refused to eat the candies and snacks brought by my friends. My hairstyle, shoes, socks, and book bag did not inspire envy. No one from home ever came to be with me on prize giving day, regardless of how many awards I had won. They didn't know that in front of them I was desperate to keep up the pretense that I came from a normal, loving family. I couldn't possibly tell anyone the truth, how worthless and ugly Nying made me feel most of the time, how I was held responsible for any misfortune and was resented for being simply being around, how my mind was racked with anxiety and constantly burdened by an impending sense of doom, how I simply loathed myself and wished I could disappear, especially when I was in front of my parents. The worst of it was that I could see no way out. That was why I found it hard to fall asleep and sometimes still wet my bed. But if I tried to be really good and studied very, very hard, perhaps things would become different one day, I would think. Meanwhile, I must not tell anyone how bad it really was. I should just go to school every day and carry inside me this dreadful loneliness, a secret I could never share. Otherwise, it would be over, and father and Naing would never come to love me. Chapter 10, Shanghai School Days. Just making sure because I believe Shanghai School Days. Of all the girls in my class at Shenzhen, Wu Chunmai was the most athletic. She came from one of Shanghai's wealthiest merchant families and lived in an imposing mansion near the French Club, which I passed daily on my way to and from school. Her father had spurned commerce for medicine and attended medical school in the United States, where Chun Mei was born. Her mother was a well known artist and book illustrator. Being an only daughter, Chun Mei was privileged in many ways. I first noticed Wu Chin-mei when we played shuttlecock against each other one day during recess. A shuttlecock is a round piece of cork and feathers stuck in the top. When the shuttlecock was hit to and fro with a racket across the net, the game was called badminton. At Shenzhen, we sometimes used the shuttlecock to play a different game. We would kick it up and down and add up the number of kicks made without interruption. The girl with the highest number of kicks was the winner. I'd always considered myself a skillful player, but my first game against Wu Chen-mei turned into an exhibition featuring my opponent's talent. Unlike the rest of us who counted themselves pretty lucky if we could kick the shuttlecock 15 times in a row, Wu Chen-mei could go on indefinitely. While kicking the shuttlecock front way, sideways, and behind her, she could also clap her hands, twist her legs, and even turn her body all the way around. In due course, I became more and more impressed by Wu Chen-mei's athletic skills. She had strength, agility, coordination, and amazing prowess in all types of physical games, especially ping pong, badminton, and volleyball. Best of all, she possessed a single minded fierceness, a fearless loyalty toward her teammates. Like me, she also loved to read. Unlike me, she was able to bring to school an incredible variety of children's books, many translated from foreign languages, which she generously lent to everyone. One morning on her way to school in her father's chauffeur-driven car, she saw me plodding along carrying my heavy school bag. She asked her driver to stop and offered me a lift. Though sorely tempted, I had no choice but to refuse, saying with a laugh that I enjoyed walking. Chun Mei made nothing of it until 2 weeks later. It had been raining very hard and the streets were flooded. There were typhoon warnings and the school had been let out early. Many of the girls were stranded, waiting to be picked up by their families. Chun Mei had phoned her father, who came at once in his car to fetch her. On their way home, they saw me sloshing through ankle-deep water. Wu Chun Mei stopped the car and rolled down the window. Who is this lone small figure struggling along the deserted Avenue Joffrey, braving the elements? Her father asked. How about a ride? No, no, thank you, I began, I desperately clutching my school bag with one hand and my umbrella with the other. It's fun to walk in a big storm like this. As I spoke, a gust of wind almost lifted me off the pavement. My umbrella turned inside out, and I was blown sideways against the lamp post. Dr. Wu got out of his car, stood in the pouring rain, looking almost angry. Do you know it's dangerous to walk in weather like this? Then he bundled me into the back seat. I was drenched from head to toe. The water in my shoes made a puddle on the car mat. Rivulets of water dripped from my hair, which was plastered against my head. I had no raincoat, my uniform stuck to me, and I was shivering. I knew I looked awful, but I felt I must keep up appearances, so I smiled and spoke of the storm as if it were a great adventure. At the entrance to my lane, I insisted on getting out and walking to my house because I was terrified of getting into trouble for having accepted a lift. I simply could not run the risk of having Niang see me being driven to the front door in a car. They must have thought I was mad when I stepped back into the storm. Wu Chun Mei and I became friends, partnered each other when we played doubles in ping pong or badminton. She lent me her books and I helped her with her arithmetic. Although Chen Ming May excelled in English and spoke it without an accent, she was hopeless at math and often came under the teacher's fire. Though her chauffeured car invariably awaited her when school finished, she often chose to walk with me until we reached her house, with her driver trailing behind at a snail's pace. In the morning, if she happened upon me trudging along, she would order her driver to stop and would hop out and accompany me all the way. In August 1945, when I was almost 8 years old, America dropped the atom bomb on Japan. This ended the Second World War. America was the new conqueror. At school, we were given surplus sea rations for our lunch left by China's new heroes, the U.S. Marines. We ate hard biscuits, canned meat, and chunks of bittersweet chocolate. After each meal, we prayed and thanked our American allies for winning the war. Hollywood movies swept into Shanghai like a tidal wave. There was a craze for everything American. One day in September 1945, all the children in my school were bused to the Bund for to welcome the American soldiers. Along with my schoolmates, I cheered, waved welcoming flags, curtsied, and presented bouquets. American minesweepers, cruisers, and flagships clawed the muddy waters of the Hungpu River. Hotels and office buildings on the Bund were taken over by the U.S. Navy and other American servicemen. Photographs of American movie stars adorned billboards and magazine covers. Clark Gable, Vivian Leigh, Lana Turner, and Errol Flynn became household names. Their popularity soared. One schoolmate 2 years ahead of us in Form 5 actually received an autographed photo from Clark Gable sent all the way to Shanghai from Hollywood, California. She was surrounded by half the school at recess. We were born on a frenzy of excitement at the sight of the picture of the handsome actor, each of us clamoring to hold him in our hands and gaze into his dreamy eyes, even if just for a few seconds. About then, Wu Chun Mei lent me a book titled A Little Princess, translated from English into Chinese. She told me it was one of her favorites and had been written by an English author named Frances Hodgson Burnett. This fairy tale of 7-year-old motherless Sarah Crew, who started life as an heiress, turned overnight into a penniless servant girl and eventually changed her life through her own efforts, gripped my imagination as no other book had ever done before. I read it again and again, suffered Sarah's humiliation, cried over her despair, mourned the loss of her father, and savored her final triumph. I kept it so long that Wu Chen Mei became impatient and demanded its return. Coming from a secure and happy home, Wu Chen Mei could not grasp the impact this message of hope had upon me. For the first time, I realized that adults could be wrong in their judgment of a child. If I tried hard enough to become a princess inside like Sarah Crew, perhaps I, too, might one day reverse everyone's poor opinion of me. Reluctant to relinquish my newfound treasure, I begged to keep it for another 2 weeks. Laboriously and doggedly, I copied the book word for word into 2 exercise books during this grace period, committed parts of it to memory, and slept with it under my pillow until the manuscript became tattered. Though Wu Chin Mei and I spent numerous school hours together, not once did I mention my family or hint at the presence of a stepmother. In many ways, I envied my best friend. As much as possible, in front of her, I pretended that I had loving parents too. It was simply too painful to admit the truth because then the dream would vanish forever. During the spring term of 1946, when I was 8 years old and in the third grade, Father took Naing Big sis, big sister, fourth brother, and little sister north to reclaim his Tianjin properties. They stayed away for 3 months. It was a glorious spring and early summer. Though outwardly everything remained the same while my parents were away, in reality nothing was the same. The four of us left behind stepped back through time into a cheerful, buoyant, and light-hearted era that we had almost forgotten. My two oldest brothers started staying late after school to play with their friends. They refused to submit anymore to having their heads shaved, insisting on crew cuts as a compromise. They raided the refrigerator at will and ate whatever they fancied. They started taking interest in girls, whistling after pretty ones the way American boys did in Hollywood movies. On Sunday morning at breakfast, Big Brother pushed aside his usual congee and preserved vegetables and told the maid his palate needed a change. Seeing it's Sunday, how about a nice hard-boiled salted duck egg? The maid suggested. What does Sunday have to do with anything? I'm tired of preserved vegetables and salted duck eggs. Bring me a big omelet made with lots of chicken eggs. Put some ham in it too. That's what I feel like eating. Young master, you know that chicken eggs are not allowed. Cook has orders from above. You'll get us all into trouble. If you're too cowardly to talk to cook, I'll tackle the brute myself. Big brother sprang up, stomped into the kitchen, relishing his new role as young master of the house in the absence of father. He ordered the cook to make him the biggest omelet of his life, with loads of ham and plenty of scallions. A battle ensued. We have specific instructions from your mother that chicken eggs are intended only for those on the first floor, announced Cook haughtily, his whole posture oozing righteous indignation. Besides, there are not enough eggs on hand to make such an omelet as you have in mind. Not enough eggs, eh? Challenged Big Brother. We shall see about that. He started a systematic search, beginning with the refrigerator, ending in the larder, retrieving every egg he could find. He then methodically broke them one by one in a giant bowl. Meanwhile, offended by Big Brother's trespass into his domain and violation of his orders from above, Cook was saying frostily, I'll have to report this egg hunt of yours, just as I'm going to mention to your parents about your airmail letters. He was referring to messages sent to two pretty sisters who lived immediately behind us. Their third floor bedroom window faced the rear window of my brother's room separated only by an alleyway. The boys amused themselves by wrapping scribbled notes around hard candies and then using rubber band slings to catapult them across. The day before, an errant missile had unfortunately landed on the bald head of our neighbor's cook, who had rushed over to our house to complain loudly to his counterpart. Chagrined but defiant, Big Brother blithely whipped up all the eggs, added ham and scallions, and made himself a king-size 16-egg omelet. You can inform on me all you want, but first I'm going to treat myself to a decent breakfast for once, whether they approve or not. As for your buddy, the thump to his head will probably stimulate his conch to sprout a full head of hair again. He should thank me for doing him the favor. With that, he sailed into the dining room with his omelet and emptied his plate with relish. Aunt Baba, who had been working full-time as a bank teller, felt freer during this period to spend most evenings and weekends after work playing mahjong with her friends. Yi grew close to third brother and me and often escorted the two of us to picnics at Jume Gardens, a public park 1 tram stop from home. Cook would prepare wonderful sandwiches for us, thick layers of eggs flavored with mushrooms and ham, pocketed into loaves of fresh, crusty French baguettes. I used to chase third brother along the winding paths of the meticulously manicured arbor, hide behind the giant sycamore trees, and roll across the lush green lawn, which spread out as far as my eyes could see. Feeling happy and relaxed, I could watch third brother imitating Yi Yi in his Tai Chi class exercises, stand on tiptoe and crane my neck to catch a glimpse of the famous players competing in Chinese chess, and listen to the professional storytellers spinning yarns about kung fu heroes. Sometimes, if we were lucky, a band would be playing music from the doomed pavilion in the center of the park. We would play for hours, pretending to be well-known characters from Chinese folklore, taking turns as the hero or villain. When third brother was away from our two oldest brothers and big sister, he seemed to turn into a different person. I like you much better when I play only with you, I confided one day. You don't order me around or make me the bad person all the time when we play Three Countries War. You are fair and the others despise me. It all stems from our mama dying when you were born, big sister, and our two older brothers knew her better than I did. I only remember her a little. Things were much nicer when she was alive. You made her go away. We all live in our big house and it's full of people, but it's a lonely place, I said. I can't wait to grow up and get away. I'll take Yi and Aunt Baba with me. You can come too if you like. It's not only Naing. Big sister and second brother are always picking on me too. They hate it when I lead my class and father praises me. Then they're especially mean. They think I don't know, but I do. It's pretty bad for me too, sharing a room with our two big brothers. When things don't go well, they take it out on me. Big brother yells at me and second brother beats me up and grabs my stuff. How were things different when our own mama was still alive? Do you sometimes think of her too? Of course, when she was with us, everything was just nicer, and I remember feeling safe all the time. Wouldn't it be splendid if we could just go visit her where she is now, away from our real home, where I have to be careful not to say the wrong thing? But we can go visit her, I said. All you have to do is close your eyes and imagine it. I've seen her place before. It's so real. I find it hard to tell whether I saw it or dreamed it. She lives in a magic garden high up in the clouds. Nothing in Shanghai can compare. It's full of trees, flowers, rocks, and birds. All children are welcome. If no one knows about her place and we keep it secret, then they can never find us. I wrote it all down once and showed it to Big Sister. I asked her what our mama looked like because I couldn't picture her face. Big Sister said she didn't remember. Big Sister? How can you confide your real feelings to Big Sister? How stupid you are. If you want to know about our mama, why don't you ask Aunt Baba? As for Big Sister, don't trust her. Don't trust anyone. Be a cold fish, just like me. Never get involved. That's my motto. I hurt no one, and no one can hurt me. I thought over his advice. That evening, I broached the subject with my aunt. Tell me what my real mama looked like. I have this key in my head which enables me to enter the secret kingdom where she lives, but I would like to see her photograph. I can't picture her face. Your father has instructed me not to talk to bleh, not to talk to you children about your dead mother. It seemed hard for Aunt Baba to utter the words, your dead mother. But I suppose you're old enough now to understand. There are no photographs of her. Shortly after your grandmother's funeral 3 years ago, your father ordered all your mother's photographs destroyed. A week later, Shanghai was gripped by a relentless, blistering heat wave. Finally, Sunday came and there was no school. Yi and Aunt Baba had gone to the Buddhist temple. It was early afternoon, and a heavy drowsiness shrouded the entire house. I had just completed my homework and was rereading my latest report card while relaxing on my bed under the mosquito net. Though the windows were open, there was no breeze. I was recalling the excitement in my classroom 2 days before when the midterm exam grades were read out. My classmates sat in rapt attention as Teacher Lin rustled some papers and looked for her glasses. I relived the triumph of hearing Teacher Lin announce, Yan Zhuling, my name outside of the family, has led the class again in every subject except art. I commend her for her hard work. Earlier this year, the school submitted one of her compositions to the children's writing competition held by the Shanghai Newspaper Association. I'm glad to report that she has won first prize for her age group among all the primary students in Shanghai. Yoon Jun Ling has brought recognition to our Shenzhen school. Amidst loud clapping and admiration of my peers, I stepped forward to shake hands with Teacher Lin. She handed me a special gold star to paste on my report card, as well as a copy of the newspaper in which my composition had been published. To everyone's surprise and my delight, my ping pong partner, Wu Chen Mei, received two special prizes, a medal for being the outstanding athlete of the whole school, and a certificate for showing the most improvement in arithmetic. Wu Chen Mei blushed with pleasure when Teacher Lin pinned the medal on her uniform. I whispered champion and patted her in the back when she returned to her seat. How wonderful life is at the moment, I thought as I fanned myself and wriggled my toes. With father and Naeem gone, the whole house seemed relaxed and carefree. If only it weren't so hot. I was scanning the other children's winning entries in the newspaper when the maid came in and announced, your brothers want you to go downstairs and play with them in the dining room. They have a treat for you. I was dizzy with excitement as I crawled out from under my mosquito net and slipped on my shoes. Are all three of my brothers playing in the dining room? Is third brother down there too? Yes, they're all there. How mysterious and delightful. My three big brothers beckoning me to join them. I ran downstairs eagerly, taking 2 steps at a time. Then, sliding down the banister from the first floor to the ground floor, I burst in, panting for breath. They had been drinking orange juice and put their glasses down when I entered. On the dining table was a large jug of juice and 4 glasses. 3 were empty, 1 was full. What a hot day, second brother began, bubbling with laughter. I see you're sweating. We thought you'd like a glass of juice to cool you down. Here, this one's for you. Something in his manner caused me to hesitate. To be summoned by second brother out of the blue and he treated so royally was cause for suspicion. Why are you so nice to me all of a sudden? I asked. At this, he took offense. Moving closer, he jostled me. It's because you are again top of your class. In addition, you won that writing competition held by the Shanghai Newspaper Association. Seeing father isn't here, we decided to reward you ourselves. I don't want it, I cried as I pushed the glass away. We even put ice in it so you'll cool down at once. He picked up the glass and the ice cubes tinkled. A film of moisture had condensed on the glass cool surface. Tempted, I turned to Big Brother. Did you make it especially for me? We mixed it from this bottle of orange concentrate here. This is your prize for being top of your class, custom made just for you. My 3 brothers could hardly contain themselves with suppressed merriment. I could feel the humid, oppressive heat seeping through the walls. I eyed the cool glass of juice with its ice cubes rapidly melting in a shaft of sunlight slanting across the table. I lifted the glass and turned to third brother, my ally, knowing that he would never fail me. Can I drink this? I asked confidently that he could be relied upon. Of course, congratulations! We're proud of you. Convinced, I took a generous sip of the ice cold drink. The disgusting smell of urine hit me like a mighty blow. My brothers had mixed their urine with the juice. Through the mirror hanging on the wall, I could see them rolling on the floor with hysterical laughter. I ran upstairs to the bathroom to wash out my mouth, knowing I had been duped. Sweat poured down my face and mingled with my tears as I sobbed quietly into the sink. In the suffocating heat, I was shivering. Meanwhile, my brothers had already forgotten all about me. I could hear them in the garden playing with Jackie and kicking a ball against the wall. Pong, 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 woof, woof. The raucous sound of their laughter came drifting up through the window. Why was I crying? Surely I was inured by now to their malice. What was it that truly bothered me? Their treachery or betrayal of my trust? No, not quite. It was more complicated. Did third brother really understand what he was up against by wanting to have those things both ways and straddling the fence? Was he aware that each compromise would chip away at his integrity? Yes, it was the loss of the nicest parts of third brother that saddened me. Next morning on my way to school, when Wu Chen Mei came out of the garden as soon as she saw me, she challenged me to a numbers game played with our fingers as we walked along, trailed by our usual, trailed as usual by her chauffeured car. At a red light, an American Jeep stopped beside us. 2 tall, blonde U.S. sailors in smart, sharply creased white uniforms shouted out in English, "Little girls, do you know how to get to Avenue Joffrey?" I said nothing because my English was poor and I was shy, but Wu Chen Mei answered in her best American English, "Actually, you're on Avenue Joffrey. It's a very long street that goes on and on." They were delighted and astonished. "Gee, thanks," they said. One of them added, "Here, you two take this." And he handed Wu Chunmei a large basket of luscious red persimmons. During recess, we examined our windfall and shared the fruit among our friends. Though my classmates often brought snacks, I never dared, except because I knew I could never reciprocate in kind. This time, however, things were different. Half the fruit had been given to me. Though bright red and perfectly formed, the persimmons felt hard and unripe. Maybe we should keep them on our desk and let them ripen before we eat them, I advised. Raw persimmons are so puckery on the tongue. You're too cautious, Wu Chen Mei said. There are 2 types of persimmons. The the fuyu persimmon is supposed to be eaten when it's like this. They're crispy and sweet, just like apples. All right, Lin Tao Tao said. You take a bite first, Wu Chen Mei. Wu Chen Mei took a big bite. Delicious, she exclaimed, just as I thought. Reassured, we each bit into our fruit, only to pucker up in total disgust. But Wu Chen Mei looked so impish and mischievous that we soon all burst out laughing. During English class later that afternoon, we had a special visitor. An impressive-looking middle-aged American officer came in uniform and give us a talk on Pearl Harbor. He was a chain smoker, and our whole class was fascinated as we watched him. While his sentences were being translated by our English teacher, he would take a deep drag on his cigarette and, after an interval, let the smoke slowly escape from his nostrils. At the end of his speech, we clapped politely. He then asked if there were any questions. There was a pause. Surely, he coaxed, one of you young ladies must be curious about something. He took another drag on his cigarette. We stared at the tendrils of smoke coming out of his nose. Finally, after another embarrassing lull, Wu Chen Mei raised her hand. Now here is a brave young girl, he exclaimed. What is your question, my dear? I hope you don't mind, Wu Chen Mei asked in her flawless English, but can you make the smoke come out your ears, too? All right, that is the end of chapter 10, and that is all I can read.